It looks like all the hard copies that were printed over.
You ready? Okay. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome as I call to order the September 2023 meeting of the Escambia County School Board. Whether you are joining us via our live stream or in the audience, we appreciate your interest in the education of the students of Escambia County. I ask that you silence your cell phones at this time, and I remind you that if you wish to speak to either an agenda item, at the public hearings for policy changes, or at the public forum, you must complete a speaker request form found at the table at the rear of the room and bring it forward to Ms. Dwelly at the front table. It is this board's practice to pull items from the consent agenda when someone asks to speak to them. The consent agenda items include curriculum and instruction, finance, human resources, and operations. On the form, please be sure to indicate whether your intention is to speak at the public forum or to a specific item on tonight's agenda. You must submit your speaker form prior to the adoption of the agenda. This meeting was properly advertised in the Pensacola News Journal on September 1st, legal notice number 5800533. It is the tradition of the Escambia County School Board to begin our meeting with an invocation or a motivational moment followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. And this month, Mr. Adams, District 1, will lead us.
Thank you, sir. Before we go to invocation, Superintendent, want to comment on a very sad situation for our district.
Yes, thank you, Board Member Adams. This morning, while at work, we were notified in the Superintendent's office that yesterday evening, we lost one of our students in a tragic accident. So what I would ask is this evening, as we bow our heads and Reverend Porter leads us in prayer, that you would pray for comfort and peace for the parents of that student, for that student's family, for the fellow students at that school, for his teachers, faculty, and staff, and for us. Thank you, Mr. Adams.
Thank you, sir. At this time, I'm going to invite Pastor Gary Porter of the Encounter Church to come to the podium for the invocation. Please rise, and it will be followed with the Pledge of Allegiance.
Let's pray. Gracious Heavenly Father, we first want to be mindful of this family that's lost a precious child. Lord, we know the tragedy and the pain and the suffering that goes when a loss like this occurs. We pray for the family. We pray for their friends. We pray for the staff at the school. We ask for grace and for comfort and for peace. Father, we thank you that all those things are possible because of what your Son has done for us. And we come tonight to you in faith, asking for your wisdom and your discernment and your grace to be given to each of these men and women on this board who solely for the purposes that Jesus asked us to pray for when he said and declared to us that thy kingdom would come and that thy will would be done on the earth even as it is in heaven. I ask that you grant them all the grace that awakens within them, as in all of us as constituents of this school district, the spirit of fear of the Lord that would remove all other fears. I ask that you give them wisdom beyond their own understanding and even beyond their own life experience and training. A wisdom with understanding and prudence to fully govern and direct this school district in ways that honor you, the Most High, and would honor and respect our school staff and students in helping them achieve the highest degree of academic study and learning and to become the best future leaders and citizens of this great nation. Give a spirit of unity and commitment that we can all find ways to work together for the advancement of all of our students and our staff. We ask for divine protection for all in safety and security as we seek to achieve these goals. Let righteousness rise as the sun, and darkness and evil be dispelled and driven away by the host of heaven itself. I also stand in the boat of this community and speak peace to the storms that face us as a community and as a school board. We ask that all of this be done in the most holy and wonderful, matchless name of your Son, our Savior, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. The pledge. Pledge allegiance to the flag
Of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you all. At this time, we will move to the adoption of the agenda. Mr. Superintendent, are there any additions or deletions to your recommended agenda?
Yes, sir. Under Section 6, proposed additions or revisions to school district rules, first reading, item A has been deleted. Item F has been added, which is changes to School Board Policy Chapter 7, 7.02, 7.05, and 7.14. Under Section 15, consent curriculum, professional learning, item A has been added, summer reading books for K-12 students. Under Section 16, consent curriculum, student services, item B has been added, enrollment services, student transfers. Under Section 24, consent, finance, procurement, item Q has been deleted. Item R has been added, that's a bid award for condiments, spices, and staples. Item S is an add. It's Amendment 1, staffing agreement, Charter Schools USA, Warrenton Preparatory Academy. Item T is an add, additional USDA commodity purchase. Item U is an add, annual agreement renewal, Building Wings LLC. Item 5 is an add, annual agreement renewal, DocuWare software and services. Item W is an add, annual agreement renewal, that's for VMware software licenses. Item 6 is an add, annual agreement renewal, Blackboard software and services. Under Section 25, consent, human resources, instructional professional, item B has been deleted. Item G is an add, instructional reappointments. Item H is an add, approve the following job description on the professional salary schedule effective September 19th, 2023, coordinator, threat management. Item I is an add, amend the 2023-2024 Department Personnel Planning document for the cost center 4125 Protection Services Department. Under Section 30, consent, operations, facilities planning, final payments, item A has been added, construction manager at risk services, window replacements at West Pensacola, Cordova Park, Montclair, and at the J.E. Hall Center. Under Section 40, items from the board, item B is an add, ECPS Superintendent Evaluation Instrument. Under Section 41, items from the Superintendent, Student Discipline. Item A and item B are both deleted. Item C is an add, formal hearings. Item D is an add, disciplinary reassignments. And then finally, under Section 42, items from the Superintendent, Employee Discipline, item A is an add.
Thank you, Mr. Superintendent. State statute and school board rules require that changes made to the agenda after publication be based on a finding of good cause determined by the person designated to preside over the meeting and stated in the record. Is there any objection from any board member to the additions or deletions? Being none, do I have a motion to adopt the agenda as amended for good cause at this meeting?
Mr. Chairman, I move we adopt the amended agenda.
I'll second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Being none, please vote.
Approved 5-0.
Thank you, Mr. Superintendent. Next, we will have our committee and departmental reports and special recognitions. We'll start with the Stellar Employee of the Month, Mr. Superintendent.
Yes, sir. Escambia County Public Schools Office of Community Involvement is proud to recognize Ms. Tashara Houston as a Stellar Employee for the month of September 2023. Ms. Houston, if you'll approach the podium. We would like for any of your coworkers, friends to come with you. Okay, Tashar, I'm getting ready to read some stuff about you, okay? When discussing dedication, Tashara Houston immediately comes to mind. She exemplifies the traits of a hard-working employee who consistently goes above and beyond to support the faculty, staff, and students of Oakcrest Elementary School. With a tenure of 24 years within our district, Ms. Houston has held various positions including teacher assistant, library media clerk, and presently as an administrative clerk, all of which have been exclusively within Oakcrest Elementary. Each day she arrives with a positive attitude, radiating a smile and charismatic personality that brings light to any room she enters. Over her extensive career, Ms. Houston has consistently shown she is not simply an average employee. She consistently arrives early and willingly stays late to ensure tasks are completed, while also extending assistance to fellow colleagues who may require additional support. Her commitment to excellence is evident as she strives to make a positive impact on the lives of everyone she encounters. Despite not working directly with students, Ms. Houston always warmly greets them with a good morning and a smile, frequently offering words of affirmation and encouragement such as, "Have an amazing day," "I love you," and "I know you can do it." These small gestures have an immense impact on the success and well-being of our students, illustrating her genuine love and care for them. Throughout her tenure at Oakcrest Elementary, Ms. Houston has fostered lifelong relationships with our parents, community members, and students alike. She consistently makes time to attend extracurricular activities of both current and former students, supporting their academic events and sports with enthusiasm from the stands. Truly, she embodies the Oakcrest motto of every student, every day, whatever it takes, and is a valuable member of our team. Ms. Houston provides outstanding customer service to our parents, consistently receiving expressions of gratitude for exceptional support. Not only does Ms. Houston serve as an outstanding role model for our students, but she has also set an example for her colleagues. Her dedication to going above and beyond and making everyone feel welcome is commendable. Whenever a fellow employee faces a challenging day or a personal difficulty, Ms. Houston quickly steps in to offer support and assistance. Her compassionate nature and willingness to give cheerfully to others is truly admirable. She is an angel and a blessing to Oakcrest Elementary School, infusing the campus with warmth and a burst of positivity that cannot be fully described in words. Ms. Houston's unwavering loyalty ensures that she can always be relied upon to perform her duties to the best of her abilities. Tashara Houston is stellar because of her excellent work ethic and dedication to the staff and students throughout the Escambia County School District. She contributes to the healthy culture that supports high-performing teachers, leaders, and staff. It is for these reasons and so many others that she has been selected as our Stellar Employee of the Month for September 2023. Ms. Houston will receive a plaque, a pen, and a check for $100 from Members First Credit Union. Tashara, I'm so proud of you. Will you please come forward and greet the board?
I would just like to say thank you. I I feel truly blessed and honored to receive this recognition. I would like to thank God, my entire Oakcrest family, the Escambia County School District, my husband, my family, for their unwavering support throughout my journey. Thanks again for this amazing honor.
All right, for benefit of the public, we have 4 resolutions that will be coming forward, and we're going to do it in the same manner we did last month, where the board members are going to come in front of the podium, and we will do each resolution read by the deputy and vote on it by hand. And we also are going to move forward the administrative appointments so that we'll stay there for that purpose also, and then come back and be seated before the public hearing. Ready?
Yes, sir.
All right.
Can you get back?
Cybersecurity Awareness Month resolution, whereas the Escambia County Public Schools recognize the vital role technology has in our daily lives and the future of our nation, and whereas internet users, citizens, and our information infrastructure face an increasing threat of malicious cyber attacks, significant financial and personal privacy losses due to identity theft and fraud, and whereas maintaining the security of cyberspace is a shared responsibility in which each of us has a critical role. An awareness of computer security essentials will improve the security of the school district of Escambia County, Florida. And whereas the President of the United States and Congress and the U.S. Department of Homeland Security have historically declared October as National Cybersecurity Awareness Month, and all citizens are encouraged to learn about cybersecurity and put that knowledge into practice in their homes, schools, workplaces, and businesses. And whereas, recognizing that cybersecurity starts at the top, the Information Technology Department will take the lead to deploy training for all Escambia County Public School employees and students. This month, the IT department, with assistance from our community partners, will present promotions and outreach focused on different areas, such as being cyber smart, recognizing phishing threats, and giving cybersecurity the priority it deserves. And whereas the School District of Escambia County would like to recognize the Information Technology Department team for the consistently amazing work they do to keep our systems safe, they will be sharing additional cybersecurity tips throughout the month of October. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the members of the School Board of Escambia County, Florida, does hereby recognize the month of October 2023 as Cybersecurity Awareness Month. Be it further resolved that a copy of this resolution be spread upon the minutes of the regular meeting of said board, and that a copy be tendered to Mr. Brian Johnson, Manager of Information System Security, and representatives of the Escambia County Sheriff's Office, the Florida Department of Law Enforcement, and Pensacola Police Department, adopted this 19th day of September 2023.
Here.
Make a few brief comments. Superintendent, thank you. Board, thank you for the time, but especially thank you to our partners. FDLE could not be here tonight. They're a very valuable piece of what we do in our elementary schools. We're continuing that effort this year. We're very blessed in our community to have some of the leading electron detection canines. So what we do in our elementary schools, we bring those canines in as part of the discussion about cyber aware. So again, thank you to our partners, Pensacola Police Department, Escambia County Sheriff's Office, and FDLE. Thank you.
Resolution, National Bullying Prevention Month. Whereas bullying is unwanted, aggressive, and repeated or potentially repeated physical, verbal, or emotional harm intentionally directed at a person or group of people. And whereas bullying occurs in neighborhoods, playgrounds, schools, and through technology, such as the internet and cell phones. And whereas various researchers have concluded that bullying is the most common form of violence affecting millions of American children and adolescents annually. And whereas targets of bullying are more likely to acquire physical, emotional, and learning challenges, and whereas students who are repeatedly bullied often fear such activities as riding the bus, going to school, and attending school and community activities. And whereas children who bully are at greater risk of engaging in more serious violent behaviors, and whereas children who witness bullying often feel less secure, more fearful, and intimidated. And whereas the state of Florida and the school district of Escambia County commit their resources to ensure the success of the National Month of Awareness, now therefore be it resolved that the School Board of Escambia County, Florida does hereby recognize the month of October 2023 as National Bullying Prevention Month and encourages students, parents, and staff of the school district of Escambia County, Florida to engage in a variety of awareness and prevention activities designed to make our schools and communities safer for all children and adolescents. Be it further resolved that a copy of this resolution be spread upon the minutes of the regular meeting of said board, and a copy be tendered to Connie Farish and Sabrina Cunningham, directors of elementary schools, Dr. Michael Roberts, director of middle schools, Lisa Morgan, director of high schools, and Carrie Coots, director of alternative education, adopted this 19th day of September 2023.
Move the resolution.
Thank you. Have a second? Second. Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, please vote by raise of hand.
5-0. Come on,
Thank you.
ladies. Thank you.
Okay, Ms. Payne.
Red Ribbon Week resolution, whereas alcohol and other drug abuse in this nation has reached epidemic stages, and whereas it is imperative that visible, unified prevention education efforts by community members be launched to eliminate the demand for drugs, and whereas the National Family Partnership is sponsoring the Florida Red Ribbon campaign, offering citizens the opportunity to demonstrate their commitment to drug-free lifestyles, no use of illegal drugs, no illegal use of legal drugs. And whereas the National Red Ribbon campaign will be celebrated in every community in America during Red Ribbon Week. And whereas business, government, parents, law enforcement, media, medical, religious institutions, schools, senior citizens, service organizations, and youth will renew their commitment to healthy, drug-free lifestyles. And whereas schools and school districts throughout the country, along with national programs, are among those with innovative users, or innovative answers, my apologies. And whereas the state of Florida and the school district of Escambia County commits its resources to ensure the success of the Red Ribbon campaign and the national theme, Be Kind to Your Mind, Live Drug-Free. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the School Board of Escambia County, Florida does hereby recognize the week of October 23rd through 31st, 2023 as Red Ribbon Week, and encourages its staff and students to participate in drug prevention education activities, making a visible statement that we are strongly committed to a drug-free school district. Be it further resolved that a copy of this resolution be spread upon the minutes of the regular meeting of said board, and a copy be tendered to Connie Farish and Sabrina Cunningham, Directors of Elementary Schools, Dr. Michael Roberts, Director of Middle Schools, Lisa Morgan, Director of High Schools, and Carrie Coots, Director of Alternative Education, adopted this 19th day of September 2023.
Thank you, ma'am. Do I have a motion? Thank you, sir.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, please vote by raising your hands.
Approved 5-0.
Thank you.
Disability History and Awareness Week's resolution, whereas this resolution is set forth designating the first 2 weeks in October of every year as Disability History and Awareness Weeks, and encouraging our schools to provide instruction on disability history, people with disabilities, and the disability rights movement. And whereas there are approximately 440,000 students with disabilities in Florida's K-12 education system and approximately 6,200 students with disabilities in Escambia County. And whereas research has shown that students with disabilities experience greater academic and social challenges than non-disabled students. And whereas the Escambia County School District finds that in order to ensure the full inclusion of all people into society, there is a need to increase public awareness of the history of disabilities and the disability rights movement. And whereas the Escambia County School District finds that recognizing October as Disability History and Awareness Month and encouraging schools to include instruction and events focused on disability history increases respect for and acceptance of people with disabilities. Now therefore be it resolved that the School Board of Escambia County, Florida, does hereby observe the first 2 weeks of October as Disability History and Awareness Weeks. Be it further resolved that a copy of this resolution be spread upon the minutes of the regular meeting of said board, and that a copy be tendered to Mrs. Sandra Hill, Director of Exceptional Student Education, adopted this 19th day of September 2023.
Do I have a motion?
I make a motion for resolution. I'll second. You got it?
All those in favor, please raise your right hand.
Approved 5-0.
We're going to move now to the administrative appointment. Appointment.
Asking the board to approve Misty Lynn Hendricks, moving from position TSA Mathematics Subject Area Specialist to the position of Subject Area Specialist Mathematics.
I have moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, please vote by raising your hand.
Approved 5-0.
Thank you.
Up, Mindy.
So I don't want to take up a lot of time. Oh. Thank you.
I don't want to take up a lot of time, but I do want to say that I am overwhelmed with gratitude to be appointed as the new K-12 math specialist. I've been beyond grateful to have a lot of wonderful people in Escambia County who have been a supporter for me, going back all the way to my consulting teacher, my administrators, my teammates, my friends. And I just want to thank them for believing in me and my mission and vision for education. I also have to thank my personal team, my husband, my family, my friends near and far, and take a second to talk about my goal as the new math specialist. Excuse me. So my goal is to foster learning for mathematics. I want all of our students in Escambia County to be mathematicians. I don't want them to say, oh, I'm not a math person. We've got to fix that. And in order to fix that, we have a lot of work to do. We've got to remove barriers those barriers that are causing them to not feel successful in math, because everyone can be successful in math. I want to make sure that my small but mighty mathematics team, there's only 5 of us currently, but we want to make sure that we are supporting every student. Therefore, we have to support every single school and every teacher and every family member, because we want to make sure that everyone has the tools that they need. So I just want to say that we're all in, and I'm excited for this new adventure.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. We will now go back to the agenda as it's regularly done, and public forum is our next item. We'll begin the public forum, but the purpose of the public forum is to give members of the public the opportunity to address the school board on any matter regarding education and the administration of our schools. In this setting, we as board members are not compelled to answer questions or respond to you, and typically will not engage in back and forth dialogue in this venue. However, this board and the superintendent will note your contact information for a response if appropriate. As always, we invite you to contact any of us by phone or email for follow-up. A list of our meeting times and locations is posted on the Escambia County School District website. Speakers must adhere to the guidelines printed on the back of the speaker form. On the form, please be sure to indicate whether your intention is to speak at the public forum or to a specific item on tonight's agenda. Please direct your comments to the chair. You are expected to be respectful in your address to the board. You are also asked to use titles and not individual names. Personal attacks against school board members, superintendents, staff, or employees will not be tolerated. If you fail to follow these guidelines, you will be warned by the chair and subject to removal if violations continue. Each speaker will be allowed 3 minutes. Mrs. Odom will serve as parliamentarian. Ms. Buswell is our timekeeper and will start the timer with your opening remarks. The buzzer will sound when your time has elapsed, and when the timer sounds, please bring your comments to a close. Our first speaker is Doris Hayes, followed by Brian Seifstein.
Good evening, Superintendent, the school district chairman, and school board members, and all of you, good evening. My name is Doris Hayes, and I reside at 2618 Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Drive, and I'm a member of the East Side Neighborhood Improvement Association. But what I'm here for, thank you so much for calling, because my grandson is back there. He's got to go play football at 6 o'clock, so I'm just doing it. But anyway, what I'm here for to speak on the items of the school book, the history books, banding the history books. The school books. What I wanted to say is that it shouldn't be under one leadership. It should be the parents and the students discussion, not under one leadership. And as a parent and a grandparent, we don't want our history silent. We want it to be taught to our children. It is not to eliminate the history of a people, because our generation need to be truthful and acknowledgeable in the past, the present, and the future. Okay, and when you eliminate the history of any ethnic group, you are also trying to eliminate the history of their educational history and of the racial discrimination, prejudice, discrimination of that group. And that's all I have to say. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you for calling.
Brian Safeston, followed by Neil Tabbitt.
Our country is short on money, school staff, and it seems we're also short on taking responsibility for decisions. The new laws passed by the Florida legislature have cost all of us time, money, and people, the loss of people who have moved out of the state because of those things. Your inconsistency in what you deem acceptable in school books has cost your staff their dignity, time, and guarantees losing lawsuits brought against the county due to discrimination for those book removals. The way this process was supposed to work is you have media specialists, community members, and teachers you hired use their training to recommend what books are appropriate and which are not. Not religion, not politics, but training and experience should be making that decision. Not an individual you are appointing to hide from the responsibility to make a final judgment. Please don't switch decisions on children's educational materials from a rigorous process to just a hand wave of a single individual. That's all.
Thank you, sir. Neil Tabbitt, followed by Jerry McIntosh.
Good evening, Chairman, school board members. I'd like to remind you that all of you were elected by the majority of people in your district. So those people are dependent upon you to represent them. As I understand it, 2 people have brought all the objections to books. Who are you going to listen to, the people in your district or a loud minority? Okay, thank you.
Thank you, sir. Jerry McIntosh, followed by Belinda Donaldson. Jerry, I'm sorry I didn't say that. You have 6 minutes. You have minutes donated by Belinda. Okay, so thank you.
I rise in opposition to any one person being given the power over all of us and what we are representing here tonight as far as books are concerned. I don't think one person should have that kind of power over the ability to make a decision to ban books. And I've said so many times before, if we stay on this trail, this trajectory that we are on, the same thing happened in Europe many years ago, where not only did they ban books, but they banned people. They put people in ovens over there. The rise of dictators, totalitarian regimes, all was a part of banning books. And what has happened since then? It caused war, death, destruction. And this is why I'm concerned about any one person having that kind of power. That's a dictatorship, and we all know it. And so we should end it and stop miseducating our children and be sure to make sure that our children are truthfully educated so that they will have the benefit of making sure that they understand how things happen so that the future will not be so bleak. If we continue on the trajectory that we are on, we might end up in civil war and everything else in this country. The total breakdown of law and order, if we continue on the trajectory we are on. Slavery did not benefit black people in this country. Those who run around talking about woke have no idea what they are talking about. Woke was a adjective that started in the 30s when people was not allowed to lodge into hotels, when they had to use the bathroom in the woods. They could not stop at certain stations, service stations, to get gas. This is the meaning of woke. Woke means to be aware of what's around you. The things that may cause your life. This is why we continue to tell people to stay woke. Stay concerned about the things that are going on in this world, because it's going to affect you sooner or later. Martin Luther King was right when he said, whatever directly affects me will indirectly affect you. So we have to stop this madness that we are on as far as banning books, telling people that these cultural wars that has caused people to begin to hate and kill people for no reason except the color of their skin. And we have to stop this now before it's too late. And this should go all the way to the governor's office, because we are not afraid of the governor or anyone else as far as that is concerned. So we want our history taught the way everybody else is taught. And black history is the history of America. Slavery is the history of America. Lynching is the history of America. Redlining is the history of America. Bombing churches. 60 years ago to this month, 4 little girls were killed in a church because of hatred and violence. The terrorism that has taken place for so long in this country need to stop. And that means it starts with you at this level, so that we can stop, move on and get a proper education in this country that everybody has a right to. So I tell you now that we are heading to a lot of trouble in this country if we don't stop these cultural wars, if we don't stop this hatred and violence that's taking place. People were killed have been killed in churches and stores and schools and everywhere else because of a violent mentality that has taken place in this country for too long, and it must stop and it must end. Our children have to suffer under conditions that we are asking to be taught to other children, so that we won't continue on this road of hatred and violence, because they need to know what took place. They need to know that what all the ancestors, what happened during those periods of time. We need to know, and our children need to know. We will teach our children, but our children should know what they need to know as far as the racist ideas, the violence that's taking place in this country, the so-called lone wolves and all of that. It has to stop now. So we can now not, our children don't need to be demeaned in school or demoralized, but children need to be able to discuss issues that affect all of us. And that has not been done, and I thank you.
Thank you, sir. Our next speaker is Francine Mathis, followed by Tristan Martinez.
Okay, but anyway, hello to everybody, good evening, and good evening to, let me tell y'all something, I gotta say this, and I ain't got too much to say, but that used to be my world history teacher, Mr. Keith Leonard, and I was so surprised to see him sit up as our superintendent, but he is. He'll tell me when to stop talking, because he's still telling me what to do. I ain't even classroom no more. But I just really want to say that as a teacher myself, that I want to see all of history taught to every child. It really, really breaks my heart to know that my history, my heritage is not taught to everybody, because everybody needs to know. If you don't know where you was, how you gonna know where to go? And if you don't know what happened then, how do you know how to stop it from not happening again? And that's one thing that we're not doing. And I'm not saying to just talk about the bad things that happened, because slavery, that did not give us an opportunity at all. It was sad. It was demoralizing. But our children do need to know about it, so it don't happen again. And we need to also teach our children that you shouldn't feel embarrassed of what happened. It's nothing to be embarrassed about. It's something that they need to know so the other races will know what we went through, what our lives was like, and what it could be again. And we pray to God that it doesn't go back that way. But if we don't teach, it might. This is a very disturbing topic to me because when he was talking about the kids being blown up in the church, as you know, just a couple weeks ago in Jacksonville, what happened? What happened? That should not have happened. And we need to talk about it and we need to teach it so it won't happen again. The same thing happened in Jacksonville. It could happen in Pensacola, Florida. And what will we do if we don't know exactly where we've been through, what we've been through? We got to stop it. We could right now have someone to go into the schools and to do this to someone, to go in and kill people in our schools, our African American children. It has happened before in the past. Why wouldn't it happen again? So we need to talk about it, we need to teach it, and we need to let them know there's nothing to be embarrassed about. Because sometimes when you talk about certain things for African American children, they get embarrassed because they don't know how to react to it, because they don't never hear about it. We don't never teach about it. So that's what we need to start doing. We need to start teaching it so they won't be embarrassed. And as a parent, I have taught mine. And I do tell other parents, you need to teach yours. But we also need to teach other races about our heritage. So that's all. You don't have to tell me to sit down. But I just want to say thank you so much. And it's an honor to be able to speak before you. And I thank you.
Tristan Martinez. Tristan has 3 more minutes donated from Cannon Boyles. Cannon, would you raise your hand to show that you're okay? So Tristan has 6 minutes. Next would be Charlie Nichols.
First, I would like to thank the board for its reception at last month's meeting. While I still believe that AP Psychology could have and should have been offered, I understood the logic. But I'm not here to continue that discussion. I'm here to speak on what I believe to be the overarching issue that creates such friction between students, teachers, and the board, which is the lack of consultation and involvement of all 3 groups in decision making. Now, to clarify, I would like to state that I'm not by any means stating that the board does not allow students and teachers a chance to speak their mind and influence some decision making. The very existence of this public forum states otherwise. What I am saying is that this should be expanded to the very workings of the board itself. That students and teachers should have a say in creating board policy instead of just at the end when it has already essentially been decided upon. I remember a few years back when I spoke about an issue in the 21 to 22 Students' Rights and Responsibilities Handbook, I was told that schools are, quote, not set up to be independent democracies, that it was not my right to decide. But I and many others turn 18 soon, and many more former students will be able to vote next year in the election. It is our right to decide. But this right should not come after a student leaves high school. It should come while they're most involved with schooling and can actively see the effects of it. Now, had this doctrine been followed, I believe strongly that the vast majority of issues this board has had in recent years with students and teachers would have been completely avoided. Take the AP Psychology situation. Had there been more input, either a better solution could have been made, or at least the decision would have been more properly communicated with those it affected the most. The same with the book reviewing issues and, most influential to me, issues in the students' R&R. In sum, the feedback and input of teachers and students should be actively sought and considered by the board to a much greater extent. And while it may take some effort, it solves many issues the district faces. And I see I have some time left over, so I would like to give a brief remonstrance to the book reviewing, which has been described as a book banning system. And I understand that it was done in accordance of a Florida law following, which I completely understand, but the system of which is incredibly inefficient. It takes numerous resources away from the county that could be spent doing other things, and is horribly mismanaged. It blocks students from learning, but not just any students, students who are disadvantaged the most. Students who do not have outside resources at home who can supplement what they're losing at school. I remember at my school, Pensacola High School, I came in one morning eager to look at the library and just see what they have. I personally love the old history books they have in the back, but to my horror, every single book at PHS was pulled out. And whatever the correct solution is, pulling out every book is most certainly not it. Thank you for your time.
Charlie Nichols has 6 minutes. He has a time donated from Kathleen Baldwin. Thank you, ma'am. And next would be William Kaplinger. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I had an opportunity to read a simple story, and in that story, it illustrated a moral and a spiritual lesson that I hope that we will learn tonight. It talked about a farmer who goes out to plant wheat in a field, and he went to sleep. While he was asleep, others came along and they planted weeds in the wheat garden. When the community is asleep, Tallahassee has threatened the certification of teachers based on biases and legislation. Teachers will lose their certificates because they fail to perhaps have the appropriate books as per Constitution or legislation. Their professional judgment is no longer needed. The classroom libraries are closed. The regular library in the school is closed. Only the principal who seemingly have the time to review any requests to show videos of media activity lessons to students. It grieves me that teachers are having to go through these kinds of issues. When the community sleeps, the number of teacher vacancies during the summer before school began was somewhere near 200. And it concerns me that we're unable to recruit teachers and give bonuses so that we can be assured that they will have a job here in Escambia County. We also found that one of the other areas of concern is that many of the teachers who are new to the city comes and they're unable to find housing because the rent is rather high, and it's difficult for them to be able to pay the rent based on the salary that is given. When the community is asleep, we find that the poverty level at one time in 2021 was around 31,000. We pay new teachers $45,700, which means a teacher is only $1,200 away from the poverty level. So I'm really concerned about what's happening when the community is asleep. And I believe that it is time for us to wake up. How do we do that? When we wake up, we will allow those persons, as this young man who just walked away, who will become 18, to register to vote. And when he votes, he will make a decision, not only for those of you who are seated here today, but for those of you who are there in Tallahassee making the decisions that they're making now. When this community is awake, what we will find out is that we can go back to a situation that occurred here in Escambia County when we found that teacher shortage was about to happen. We looked into the classrooms like the young lady who received the award earlier today, and we captured those individuals, talked to the University of West Florida, and we began to develop opportunities for those persons to get a degree in education and become teachers in Escambia County, Florida. When we are awake, we can begin to pay decent salaries. I remember going on recruiting trips with Elvin McCorvey and some of the others, and the students will pass by our tables and they will laugh at the salaries, laugh at what we had to offer, and they will go right across from us to Texas and take those bonuses, take those beginning monies that will help them to get started in those communities. And we sat there and watched the things that occurred. So I ask that we need to continue to stay woke. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir. Next is Bill Kaplinger, followed by Pam Schwartz.
My name is, pardon me, is Bill Kaplinger. I have lived in Pensacola since the early 70s. My son was born here in 1976. He went through the school system here, both some private school to begin with, a Creative Learning Center, and then on through the public school system, finishing PHS and IB student, and very much, and I've been very much impressed and satisfied with the path of education in Pensacola, Florida, at least until recently. I just want to caution you that to do what apparently has been done, and not just by the school board, but where these social issues and side issues and unhappy decisions has really put the reputation of our community, Pensacola, Florida, which I am a strong member of and strong defender on. I guess my bottom line really is, please, please don't blow the great reputation that Pensacola has had over years over emotional sideways issues. We need to teach our kids more, not less, and I ask you to please consider that and know that we care. We care about this town, we care about each other and our reputation. So, thank you for listening.
Thank you, sir. Pam Schwartz has 9 minutes. Paula Montgomery, would you raise your hand, Paula? You donated 3 minutes, and so did Barbara Beck. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. You've heard me before. I am a mother, a grandmother. I taught in Escambia County School District starting in January of 1970 for 30 years when we were newly desegregated under court order. In my first month of teaching, my husband was shocked because I would go home with my box of books to do lesson planning and boo-hoo and have a nervous breakdown. And he said, "What do you mean? You've always wanted to be a teacher." I was the first of my family to go to college on scholarship. I graduated with honors. And he said, "You mean you're going to have a nervous breakdown your first month with a real teaching job?" And this was 1970. My family growing up, I didn't have money. I grew up in the age where children should be seen and not heard. But I had a foundation of faith, hope, and love. And my family believed in the importance of working hard in the American dream, and education was an part of that. I still believe that education empowers and enriches everyone, everywhere. If I had not had stellar employees back then, as we have today, who have gone into education not for the money, it's never been about the money, but it's a calling. It is heart work. And it is hard work, and it makes me want to cry at what has happened that I think is a smear on the people that I worked with for 30 years. And when I retired because of my frustrations over legislative policies and laws that made the educational employees have to spend more time on paperwork and policies to satisfy partisanship rather than truly helping educators and the students they were trying to help in spite of poverty. And what I witnessed and experienced happening to the adults who worked in the system as well as students, I saw nepotism, cronyism, racism, sexism, genderism way back then. And I have worked my entire life in public service, committed to serve as I believe my faith tells me to do. trying to be an instrument of peace and harmony. And I am so sad by my government at every level, and especially in my state, that targets groups of people with derisive remarks, changes our curriculum to where we cannot even say diversity, equity, and inclusion in spite of the beautiful biodiversity that our Creator gave us. And we have government officials who say that we should not even use those terms, that we should not consider the social emotional needs of our students. And we have fear and intimidation of people who want to keep their jobs, but they are fearful of losing their jobs because of confusing laws and how they are implemented at every level. The book banning and the things that are going on in the state of Florida are causing us to lose veteran teachers and even people who have any degree or a warm body that we try to put in our public schools. Our public schools have been demonized. Our teachers have been made scapegoats for ongoing 30 years, and it's becoming worse and worse in my 75 years in recent years. And it is tragic what is happening. This Sunday's paper had an article, "Extremism will cost us democracy if we don't fight it." And it's talking about government officials that are targeting LGBTQ people. I have family and friends and fall into those categories. We have people of color. I have friends red, yellow, black and white and brown, every color. I am a Christian person, but I have friends who are Muslim and Jewish and Buddhist and others. I have had the opportunity to travel and get to know people of other cultures. And they all want what our Declaration of Independence said are certain, among which unalienable rights from the Creator. They all want life, liberty, and justice. And we are not seeing justice. There is too much discrimination going on with our elected officials every day. And I am begging all of you to search your hearts, because our government that's trying to play God and indoctrinate people with false lies and spending big money with corporations and other people, and they are not giving everybody equity with health services, mental health especially, which is a tragedy, and everybody is stressed out these days. Our children, when they see the adults who are angry and they put more guns into the world, our children who see what's happening with our book banning, and our children who maybe come from homes where they are having families that are LGBTQ, who are good citizens and good parents, but they are they are treated as though they are an abomination of God. They are all God's creation. So this is what our children are witnessing. So it's all well and good to pass these resolutions that we have passed from the beginning of my time in this school district. But extremists that are willing to demonize and target groups of people to try to get votes and to perpetuate their personal power and profit, it is a tragedy. And God will be their judge one day, in my faith and what I believe, because each of us is to act individually and not act like my interpretation of the Bible is better than yours, or my faith is better than yours. We have had vandals by teenagers on Jewish tabernacles here in Pensacola. We had a 15-year-old girl who got a gun, shot at her mother, didn't hurt her mother, but killed the mother's fiance. We have child abuse going on in every economic status that happens in our churches and other private places that are now homeschooling, private schools for profit, and churches that may be indoctrinating children in ways that you don't even realize, that can't give the special education services that our public schools can sometimes. But with the new laws, they're all leaving the public schools because the public schools have been demonized. And I am here to say that September is Suicide Awareness Month. I am an advocate for the National Alliance of Mental Illnesses, and I have family and friends that suffer from mental illnesses. And the statistics are shocking here. The United States is in crisis with mental health. And every level, the sadness and suicide year after year, according to the CDC report in February 2023, nearly 3 in 5, 57% of United States teen girls felt persistently sad or hopeless in 2021, doubling that of boys. Maybe it's because women's reproductive rights and choices are being denied them and freedom to women. I would say my girls and my granddaughter and my daughter, I'm worried for their rights and freedom here. And we have other statistics. I am on the board for Gulf Coast Kids House. Every month we have statistics, and you see it in the news. This week, there's a mother in prison because a 15-year-old was babysitting multiple children, one of whom had to be hospitalized in a horrible living condition and didn't have food and things that are going on. The poverty that we experience and the stresses on the mental health of the families, much less our employees, when they don't feel they are able to comfort and support children in need that come from these homes. And now we have more homeschooling and more schools that are not regulated, and the way you're regulating book banning, it's not the books on a shelf. You'd better be checking the the social media and the bullying that is going on there. Let's do something about the mental health and well-being of all of our children, please.
Thank you, ma'am. Our next speaker is Christina Forrest, followed by Jill Lewis-Daggs.
I believe I was donated 3 minutes by
I don't have that.
by Jill Lewis-Daggs.
That she's next. Is Jill Lewis-Daggs here? And you are donating your time? Okay, go ahead.
As the first Vice President of the Democratic Black Caucus of Florida, I cannot be silent. We will not allow current politics or anyone to whitewash American Black history, Black people, or Black culture. Black history is American history. Any attempt to lie about the impact of slavery is an attempt to uphold white supremacy. Black history does not begin in slavery. It begins in the indigenous cultures and empires of Africa. And just like how the Roman Empire led to the current makeup of Europe is taught, and the various Asian empires are taught, the African empires and South American cultures should be taught. No person in their right mind would say women throughout history benefited from rape. No person in their right mind will tell a survivor of the Holocaust that they benefited from the Holocaust. Yet DeSantis and the so-called Educational Board unanimously agreed that it was okay to say that Black people had some benefit from slavery. That is insulting, that is degrading, and that is unacceptable. All children of every race, gender, and background deserve to have accurate history taught. The transatlantic slave trade lasted 366 years and moved 12.5 million Africans across the Atlantic Ocean. It was the largest forced migration in human history. When you add American segregation, Jim Crow, mass incarceration, that is hundreds of years of massive human rights violations, genocide, and hate. We are still fighting for justice. Let's tell the truth. Supplemental materials like PragerU should never be approved. PragerU is not accredited, it is not a university, it is not based on fact. When we look at the implications of PragerU throughout the state of Florida, teacher contracts largely protect them to have the autonomy to build into their lessons PragerU videos. Yet, as a school board, you can say this is not part of our lesson plans, this is not part of our maps, this is not part of our curriculums. Yet I am dismayed by the silence of each of you. to say nothing, to sit in silence and complicity. This is our children. I stand here during Hispanic Heritage Month, yet what have any of you said at all? What are you saying? You have a right. You have the ability to impact generations with what you decide right now and right here. I'm just asking you to do the right thing and tell the truth. Stay woke.
I need to take a point of contact for just a second. Bear with me, thank you. Thank you. I need clarification from the parliamentarian on something. Our next speaker is Neil McDonald, followed by Mary Lynn McDonald.
I apologize. Thank you for this opportunity, Mr. Chairman, and the rest of the school board. And I just wanted to talk tonight about, just to read a few excerpts from some of the books that are on the list that we were looking at. And the first book I'm going to look at is called Yoke, and it's actually on the website that's administered to by the school district. Yes.
Before you start, reading excerpts from the book. Are these excerpts that will offend children or some people?
Yes.
All right, then I would say at this time, before you read any excerpts, and in the past we have not had anyone do it because we were believing that our streaming would violate FCC regulations. Streaming does not come under FCC. As we have seen in other school districts, there is a right to read those. But before you do, if there's any children or anyone in the room who feels like they will be offended or distasteful or in any way they don't want to, anyone who's on the live stream may want to mute before excerpts are read. Go ahead.
Okay. All right. This is an excerpt from this one. It said, "It was dark, and when he switched from sucking on my neck to kissing my mouth again, I moaned in that way that every girl knows how, even if they don't want to. It was surreal when he took my hand and guided it to his fly. I was shocked by how suddenly I was touching Holland Hint's penis and how hot his penis felt. It was not unlike petting an unseeing, hairless cat. When the spurt of feverish ooze landed on my hand, it glistened as it cooled." And there's a lot more in that particular book, and that one's in our high schools. Next one's called Collateral, and this is in the high school level. It says, they say the size doesn't matter, but in my estimation, it makes things both problematic and sort of amazing. I quickly learned to relax my jaws, coax him inside my mouth little by little. It was intense, and all I'd wanted in those moments was to make him feel like the most important man in the world. Size definitely mattered. When he finally slipped inside of me, if I hadn't been so wet, it would have been uncomfortable. As it was, he filled me up completely, a sensation I had never known. He flipped onto his back, pulled me on top of him. His eyes never left my face as he lifted my hips, slid me backward against his critically hard erection. And it goes on and on and on. It gets much more graphic than that, believe it or not. Another one's called Defy Me. And this one's in a high school, and this one actually is at a middle school level too.
Mr. Chair, may I ask a question?
Yes, ma'am, go ahead.
Have these books, are they on our challenged list? Have they actually had an official challenge? Okay. They have been pulled from the shelves. Okay, thank you.
Are they still available on, online or not? Just curious. I don't know the answer to that.
We wouldn't know if they're online. Online could be through anything. It's, if they're pulled from the shelves at our schools, they're staying there waiting for a determination by the media specialist as to whether or not they are in adherence with current regulations. Is that correct, Ms. Odom? Right. So they are off the shelves at this time.
I don't have any, if the gentleman wants to continue to read from books, I don't have any problem with that. If that's what he so desires. I've been trying to take notes as everyone has spoken. And that was the note that I had written to myself. So I'm asking, if you read from books, if you'll please give the title so that we can check all corridors to make sure that we have done what we said we would do. So thank you.
Yeah, the first one was called Yoke, Y-O-L-K. Y-O-L-K. The second one's called Collateral. And the third one, I believe, is called Defy Me. This one says, I try to regain control of myself, even as her eyes widen, her arms going suddenly still. Aaron, she says, what's the, take off your dress, I say quietly. Understanding awakens in her eyes. She says nothing. She only looks at me carefully as I watch, imprisoned in place by an acute form of agony. Her hands are trembling, but her eyes are willing and wanting and nervous. She shoves the material down past her shoulders and lets it fall to the floor. I drink her in as she steps out of the dress, my mind racing. Gorgeous, I think, so gorgeous. My pulse is wild. When I ask her to, she unhooks her bra. Moments later, her underwear joins her bra on the floor, and I can't look away from her, my mind unable to process the perfection of this happiness. She's so stunning, I can hardly breathe. And then it goes into this deal in the shower where it gets really crazy in there. So I won't read any more. I just wanted to bring those attention. There are many, many of these, okay? A lot of people in here have come up to me, or several people come to me afterwards and said, why do you think we're into pornography? And I said, if you don't think this is pornography, I don't know what is. And so this is some pretty bad stuff, and there's a lot of these. If you go with the list that's actually out there, you'll see that. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mary Lynn?
Could I ask him what list he's referring to?
Mr. McDonald?
So are you talking about our Destiny system, where all the books are listed for each school?
It's one that I believe that the lady that's over all the media specialist is in control of. Yeah.
Okay.
And so all these are listed in there along with all the.
So they're all on the challenged list. They're all out of the book. Okay. Those have all been removed from the shelves right now.
Right, but there's still a chance, they still have to be reviewed, is that correct?
They are in the process of being reviewed.
Yes.
Right. They are not available for checkout.
Okay, so what I'm saying is let's go ahead and get them removed completely then. That's my standing on that.
Yes, because censorship, right?
All right. We typically, okay, thank you. All right, Mary Lynn McDonald. Next after that is Vicki Baggett, who has 6 minutes.
Chairman, school board members, thank you for the opportunity to speak to you tonight. I first want to say how grateful I am, and I believe I speak for many, to have a new superintendent who has vision, strategy, and backbone. This is so refreshing. I'm also grateful for the members of our board that have been consistent in standing up for the good of our children, both their physical and their mental well-being. We all know who you are, and we thank God for you. The fact is, our public school system is broken. The truth is, there is still hope for repair and restoration. It is obvious there is a strategy that has long been implemented through the NEA to train and re-educate our children so that they easily accept sexual perversion, hatred, violence, alternative lifestyles, suicide, and more. It's called indoctrination, and it's been going on behind the scenes, well covered and unnoticed by most for a very long time. But now the hidden things are being brought to light, and this dark agenda is being clearly revealed. If we dig a little deeper and look for the source the NEA has used to get to the heart of our children, we will find the American Library Association. Our Escambia County School District is under the American Library Association. This group is highly aggressive about pushing alternate genders, alternate sexualities, and really an anything goes mentality to our children. They are known for bullying with their Library Bill of Rights, trying to present it as a hard and fast rule of law equivalent to the Bill of Rights. However, this is a farce. A United States District Court judge has ruled that the American Library Association's so-called Library Bill of Rights actually means nothing to indicate that there would be a private cause of action based upon a violation. It is not federal statute. It is just a scare tactic. So should this be used as an argument against our district, it has no validity. I want to remind you that even after House Bill 1069 was put into effect in July, we still have multiple books in our school libraries and on our students' Chromebooks that push an aggressive sexual agenda, which includes sex with anything and anybody, sex with animals, sex with teachers, sex with the dead, and nothing is left to the imagination. The American Library Association approves and encourages these types of books that are clearly setting our children up for destruction. But the good thing is, we can remove ourselves from the American Library Association. If enough districts do this, the state will demand that we drop them throughout. Other districts in our state have already done it. This is happening in many states right now. Parents and school boards are saying enough is enough. Isn't it time that we here in Escambia County say enough is enough for our children? I appeal to the school board tonight to stand up for the mental well-being of our children.
All right, next is Vicki Baggett. Ms. Baggett has 6 minutes, 3 from Christopher Marshall. Mr. Marshall, will you raise your hand? Thank you.
Good evening. I'm here tonight to talk about checks and balances. We have made great progress towards getting rid of sexually inappropriate books in our libraries, but we still have a way to go. Why is finding these books still so easy to do? As a matter of fact, as of this morning, there were close to 350 books in our cataloging system labeled as adult. Has anyone begun checking these for age and content inappropriate material? What about our online programs that our district is providing for our students? Have you begun checking this after being warned about some content found last year? I can assure you this is not going away. Parents, grandparents, and other concerned citizens are realizing what has been placed in front of our children, and an entire army is rising up nationwide. And yes, I'm helping other districts and other states as hard as I can. I'm an avid reader, researcher, and writer. Every single night, I am receiving calls from parents about books they are finding, either in their children's schools or online. And many of these books are open violations of obscenity laws. To put it bluntly, I am still finding books weekly in this district that I must submit. I keep waiting and hoping that our librarians will step up. Bravo for doing what you needed to do about books that should have never been ordered to begin with. Who decides when to restrict a book for minors when it has been submitted on sexual grounds? As recently as last week, I submitted a book that has situations in it where a boy masturbates and his orgasms explode on his bed, and he is worried about the maid finding the sheet sticky. There are also sections of voyeurism of watching his little neighbor. This book was originally not restricted from middle school in our district. After email exchanges to our library media specialist, her response to me was that she was basing this on professional reviews, but she had not read the book herself. And she was interrupted while working on the spreadsheet. She did end up changing it after my email. So one person has the ability to restrict or not, and this is based on so-called professional reviews and not on reading the book and applying current law, yet reading is required of the person bringing this to your attention? Checks and balances. The same applies with the opt-in or young adult restriction status. An example is Looking for Alaska, currently at Warrington Middle School, which has sections regarding getting laid and masturbating, but another part involves watching a woman crouch on her hands and knees while a guy kneels behind her. She hollers, "Give it to me and don't go too fast. Keep your grunting to a minimum." I won't keep going, but the next part has to do with the girl trying to figure out what to do with the man's penis as she puts it in her mouth. I ask you, board members, because ultimately you are responsible. Is this sexually appropriate for minors? Apparently, somebody in our district office thinks so. And this leads me to my next point. Last year, when I started finding so many age and content inappropriate books, I asked over and over, who has ordered these books? Nobody could answer or would answer. I now know whatever the American Library Association pushes, we jump in head first. Last year, we were told, and our council at first agreed, that books could not legally be removed from school libraries when they openly violate federal obscenity laws. After all, our wonderful ALA pushes this point on a daily basis. But now everyone is realizing the PICO decision states otherwise. Even ALA admits it at this past summer's Texas Library Conference when they said, and I quote, "School boards have greater discretion over school library materials. If the board can demonstrate that the materials are educationally unsuitable or pervasively vulgar, the removal may be upheld by the courts." We know that the current president of ALA has declared herself a Marxist lesbian. And under her far-left progressive tenure, she has pushed the 13 most challenged books as being anti-LGBT. However, she fails to even mention the sexually explicit and pornographic material. We know there are links between the ALA and George Soros. We also know the ALA promoted and defended Drag Queen Story Hour at public libraries while showing hostility towards religious Americans. So far, Missouri, Arizona, South Carolina, Pennsylvania, Montana, Texas, Idaho, Wyoming, Georgia, Mississippi, and Alabama are disassociating from the ALA, and now current districts, even within Florida, are doing so as well. Should our taxpayer money go to a self-declared Marxist-left organization that provides and encourages sexually explicit books to minor children under the guise of inclusion and diversity? It is time to draw the line. Let your actions set a precedent. I suggest the World Library Association instead. They have no bias. They have no political push, just information. Quit padding the ALA pockets with dues and fees, and certainly quit following their suggestions. After all, have people in place to read and know these books just as you would expect from a classroom teacher. It is your responsibility for this content.
Thank you, ma'am. Our next speaker is Aaron Schneier, followed by Rich Hines Necht.
Lord, thank you for helping us to speak today, Father, in Jesus' name. Amen. And thank you all for board for having us speak today. I wanted to read a passage from Genesis 19. I'm sure I'll be able to bridge it over to education at some point. The two angels came to Sodom in the evening, and Lot was sitting in the gate of Sodom. When Lot saw them, he rose to meet them and bowed himself with his face to the earth and said, "My lords, please turn aside to your servant's house and spend the night and wash your feet. Then you might rise up early and go on your way." They said, "No, we will spend the night in the town square." But he pressed them strongly, so they turned aside to him and entered his house. And he made them a feast and baked unleavened bread, and they ate. But before they lay down, the men of the city, the men of Sodom, both young and old, all the people to the last man, surrounded the house. And they called to Lot, "Where are the men who came to you tonight? Bring them out to us, that we may know them." Know them in the scriptures means sleep with them. You can look that up. Lot went out to the men at the entrance, shut the door after him, and said, "I beg you, my brothers, do not act so wickedly. Behold, I have 2 daughters who have not known any man. Let me bring them out to you, and do to them as you please. Only do nothing to these men, for they have come under the shelter of my roof." But they said, "Stand back." And they said, "This fellow came to sojourn, and he has become the judge. Now we will deal worse with you than with them." I read this passage this morning, and it actually came to my mind out of nowhere. It was a fascinating thing to me that these men who were behaving wickedly, who had come to have the guests of a man brought outside so that they could sleep with them, after being rebuked by Lot, said, "Well, who is this man now to judge?" So Lot is telling them, don't do this wicked thing. And the Sodomites are sitting there, these men that are committing a perverse act or wanting to, telling him not to judge. So the Bible tells us to take no part in unfruitful works of darkness, but instead expose them. It's what's been happening the entire time. We don't bring up the Bible because it's Bible lesson time. It's because we're having sexually erotic books, pictures of naked people in the books. That's it. And naked people. So I'm asking that they be taken out, even the books about sodomy. Thank you.
Rich Holznecky, followed by Christy Agerton Marshall.
Good evening. My name is Rich Holzneck, and as of 3 weeks ago, I am a candidate for Escambia County School Board District 4. All 4 of my children are products of the Escambia County public school system and are thriving young adults. First of all, I'd like to give a hat tip to the new superintendent and thank you for all that you've been able to accomplish in your first 3.5 months of public office. Thank you. I wish you continued success, but I can tell you that there are those who are not excited about what you're doing right now. Some of them are actually on the payroll of the school district, and they stand in opposition, especially on the matter of the books that are being made available to the children. They don't like the existing state guidelines codified in law, and they have no qualms about slow-rolling enforcement or circumventing the law completely. You can't compromise with the opposition when it comes to the law and the safety of our children. You can't straddle the fence when faced with lawless ideological activism. Do the right thing and God will bless you for it. Secondly, I'd like to thank Vicki Baggett for being a diligent watchman on the wall. She's been doing God's work, and we should all be watchmen on the wall. Vicki's worked tirelessly reviewing hundreds of books that have been found to be in clear violation of existing state statutes. The problem is, as she just stated, some of these books can still be accessed online, okay? And we can't rely on reviews by organizations like the American Library Association, who are ideologically driven by activists who do not share the values of the conservative Florida Panhandle. As already addressed, the president of the ALA is, among other things, a self-proclaimed Marxist with an agenda not shared with the majority of citizens on the conservative Escambia County. Raising the bar in the education of our children is a collaborative effort that involves supportive administration, thank you, involve parents, teachers freed up to do what they do best, teach the kids. Several quick recommendations. We all need to be law-abiding citizens who support existing laws. concerning the education of our children. If we have a problem with the laws, we need to take it up with the state legislature. We need to close all loopholes that would permit a child in our school district to access a banned book on a district-issued Chromebook on a district-sanctioned online reading site. That's got to stop. It's come to my attention that one of our official online book reading sites explicitly circumvents parental authority and does not permit parents to know what books their children are reading. I don't know who signed this pact with the devil, but it needs to be undone. Thank you for your time. God bless you all.
All right. Christy Agerton Marshall, followed by Melanie Eubanks.
Good evening. I am the one who has shown extended grace upon this board. You all know who I am. When I say unbelievable grace, I mean unbelievable grace. Mr. Keith, you know. I'm sorry, Mr. Superintendent. My intentions were made clear to not embarrass the school district any further than it already has been. However, I would like to drop some information for you all. Did you know an entire school board was suspended by the governor for violating direct, clear law? By not handling a series of serious warnings that led them straight to negligence. By not protecting not only their students, their educators. The board failed my child once. Failed her again this year. There will not be a third time. Mr. Chair, my grace ends today. Mr. Superintendent, I make no apologies. I made that clear, very point clear. You want some insight into this ridiculous book ban? Let me tell you the stupidity of it. Any person that is identifying as a parent in the right mind with children within a public school system is going to have to make this make sense to me and understand this. Why would there be a need or a desire to have any type of books within the school district that explains how to kill teachers? Why don't you board members go explain it to Columbine High School, Sandy Hook Elementary, Robb Elementary, Parkland High? Why wouldn't Pensacola's News Journal explore banning these type of books? Books in teaching how to take another's life. Books in teaching direct domestic terrorism. Thank you and Godspeed.
Thank you, ma'am. Melanie Eubanks, followed by Julie Patton.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak, and it's not taken for granted. And I am very thankful that we can all share our different opinions. And, you know, evil prevails where good men do nothing. And we need to speak up, we need to let our voice be heard, and we need to protect our children and parents' rights. It's a good thing to be able to speak. The primary objective of the Library and Media Center is to implement, enrich, and support the education program of the school. That does not include porn. We need wholesome content. We must keep pushing forward to make sure that that happens. We need to still err on the side of caution, even in high school. I've noticed several books that have already been mentioned that are restricted to high school. One that I am particularly familiar with, because I read it, talks about boys and what they do with their penis at summer camp. And I probably should have said genitals in case any little ears were listening. And it bothers me that there are people who think that's okay to be read in here because it's okay to be in the high school shelf. If you can't read it in here, it's not supposed to be there. And you know, when we listen to other people, we may not always agree with them, but it doesn't mean that we hate them or we're going to try to destroy them in any way. It means that we have differences and we need to have respect. We want that for our children in our classrooms, so we need to have it here. And, you know, if other people read from a book that you don't like, then just listen. It's only 3 minutes, maybe 6, maybe 9. And we can all learn from that. And you know, if I do read the Bible, then if it's only these few short minutes, education should be built on truth. And the Bible is built on truth. And if that's offensive to you, then I'll be done in a few minutes. And we need to listen to each other. We also need to consider the American Library Association and the books that it is pushing. And we do not want to continue with lip service. We want the action to continue to clean up our schools, to make it a safe environment for our teachers and our students and our parents. Thank you.
Our next speaker, Julie Patton, followed by Larry Downs Jr.
I wasn't going to speak today. I was going to donate my minutes, but I just can't help myself since nobody needed them. What really concerns me is that at the beginning of this meeting, you gave out an award, some award for a bullying program, okay? And I agree that bullying is a horrible thing, and we should not be allowing it anywhere. And this whole campaign to remove books from the schools is a bullying campaign. There's a very small number of people, 2 who've recommended the books, and a number of people who support them, against the will of the vast majority of the citizens of Escambia County. And so I think that it's important to recognize this as a bullying issue. People who are trying to intimidate the rest of us by insisting on their own interpretation of what's good and what's not. I'm doing a lot of study now on how we might bring some of these sides together. And the people I'm looking at are saying that things seem broken right now because they are. We need to make a change in our level of consciousness, because the way in which we are concretely sticking to a level of consciousness that served us well at another point won't serve us well in the future. What will serve us well in the future, what we're moving toward, is something called integral consciousness. And what that really means is less focus on who's good and who's bad and what, you know, and an attempt to bring everybody into the community and the center. And that includes Black people and lesbian people and women. When the young man read from Genesis about Sodom, I found myself really sympathizing with Lot's daughters, because when all of the people gathered to demand that the male visitors be offered for sexual favors, Lot said, "Oh no, don't sin in that way. Here, I've got 2 daughters, take my daughters." Okay? That was a period in time when daughters were chattel property, like men were. I mean, like slaves were. And I guess that although I am Christian and I support a great deal of the Bible, I think we have to be discriminating about some of these old stories and realize that the Bible was not very friendly to women. I want to close by saying that Newsweek released their list of the 100 best colleges yesterday, and Florida's dropped a bunch on the list because of what the governor is doing. So let's move towards integral consciousness.
Thank you, ma'am.
Rather than all these.
Larry Downs Jr., and followed by Joshua Luther.
I had to come up on the scooter. That was easier than the crutches. All right, can y'all hear me? Larry Downs Jr. Plumbing, LLC, because fecal matters. All right. Listen, I've heard a lot of stuff here tonight. I mean, are we ever going to get past this? I mean, I think we've formed the perfect crybaby society. The perfect one. I mean, there's no level that we can't drop to cry and whine about everything. Walter Williams, who was a professor of economics, he's the one who said, probably him and several others just like him, said that he benefited from slavery. He's black. That's crazy, right? Why would he say that? Why would he say, oh, Walter Williams said that, YouTube it. So anyways, he said it, but like the book I wrote, I may need a couple more seconds. The book I wrote, it's okay to be white. Skin tones, people of all skin tones have committed atrocities of their own throughout history. We're going to sit here and perpetuate this and continue the division. This doesn't happen in my gym. It doesn't happen, me and other black men, we don't have these problems. It only happens up here in these government agencies. Just like today, Biden did he did a New World Order speech. I mean, it's clear. It's almost like Klaus Schwab was speaking for him. Now, he didn't write that speech. He didn't. He's reading off teleprompter, barely squinting his eyes. I mean, come on. What do we have here? This is ridiculous. My wife's a school teacher. She spends 10 hours a week extra. On an average a year, that's 400 hours. I beg her not to. I'm like, take care of yourself. But she cares about those kids. All colors. It's amazing. Even when half the parents don't care. This is a parent issue. This is a society issue where we have pretty much dumbed down our society to where they want to blame everybody else. They want to blame everybody for their problems. When in reality, we are responsible for ourselves, our own happiness. That Bill of Rights doesn't guarantee happiness. It's the pursuit of happiness. And y'all, through no fault of y'all's own, y'all have continued this, perpetuated it more and more. Every time you do a new program, a new policy, for equity, diversion, inclusion, you're actually dividing the people. That's the reality of it. You can look at it any way you want. Adios.
Thank you, sir. Joshua Luther is our last one in public forum. So if there is somebody who submitted a form and you haven't been able to talk yet, it is marked. Mr. Bennett is the first one speaking to item 6C. Item 6C and D, student interviews with any outside government agency. That's an agenda item. It says to a special problem or issue, and you will speak when we pull that item up. If you want to speak now, you could be okay. That's fine. I have no problem with that. So, Mr. Luther, and then we'll have Rob Bennett.
Good evening. I was reading the Superintendent's strategic plan, and on the one-page version at the bottom it reads, "We commit ourselves to creating memorable, unforgettable learning experiences where diversity of thought is not just a creative necessity, it's a moral imperative." And the question I had was, what system of morality is being referenced there? Okay, so we can have moral imperatives without a system of morality. Okay, that makes complete sense. Another thing I wanted to bring up was the woeful ignorance of our high school students about the details of a very major historical event. 2,000 years ago, there was a man named Jesus who was crucified and reported to have risen again. And today, we count the years by when he came to this earth. So this is a very big thing, especially looking at the heritage of the United States. It was built on Christian principles. So I guess you guys don't teach them about the historical Jesus or about what his followers purported and how that affects today, because they were ignorant of the fact that both the Old Testament and the New Testament teaches that Jesus was punished by the Father for the sins of people he came to redeem. Just totally ignorant of that. And yes, it's a crazy thing, but it's a crazy thing that God would love us, and it's a crazy thing that was taught both in the Old Testament and the New Testament, and has changed our world. Another thing I wanted to bring up, y'all recently approved about $800 million budget for this next year, which I believe y'all have under 40,000 students. So that comes out to $20,000 a student, whereas the average private school annual tuition averages about $10,000. And if you want to throw in $5,000 for transportation, that's great. You still cut your budget, 3/4 of it. You guys could save $200 million by just sending all your students to private school, and instead of flipping a coin to see whether or not they'll be able to read and write and do math, you might have a better success rate. And ultimately, every one of you are accountable to God for what you do with what is presented to you. Y'all have a lot of light, and you're accountable to how you respond to it. Thank you.
Rob Bennett will be the last speaker in public forum. Again, if there's somebody who thinks that they wanted to speak in public forum, but you haven't heard your name, okay.
Can we clarify on the piece of paper that we're supposed to check the first box to speak about an agenda item? The second time I've checked the second box.
It didn't say, it says second box. I'm just not disagreeing. The reason I asked if there was somebody out there, if this wasn't understood when it was brought to me, I wanted to make sure you had the opportunity when you had it, sir.
Appreciate that.
Okay.
If we could check on public records request 1666, it's been out a month. I'd appreciate a response from that. Email would be great from council or Deputy Superintendent. The reason I'm speaking about a couple items tonight is items 6, C, and D, codes of conduct changes. I'm not discussing all the languages in there, but about when we're going to talk about interviewing students, that there should be another adult in the room besides the LEO. If appropriate, the staff should be in there. Who's going to decide what's appropriate? In my experience, the administrative dean didn't follow policy when my son was interviewed, and we weren't called till an hour and a half later. Who's going to deem what's appropriate? The sheriff's deputy? The ones that don't believe they have to follow school board policy even though it's in a contract? Who deems what's appropriate? I suggest you change the language in both of those, especially in the elementary. Maybe a 17-year-old can figure his way through some things, but a 4-year-old can't, a 5-year-old can't. The Escambia County Sheriff's Office General Order 553, Juvenile Procedure Part 553.66C. I'll send you a copy of it. They keep going on about parental notification. They should really do that. It says it right there in their policy. Should the parent not be able to come and be present, it suggests the deputy should request an objective school staff member to be present during any questioning. The Sheriff's Department General Order says it should happen. But who's going to deem what's appropriate? Escambia High School, a couple weeks ago, kid showed up with a black eye. Actually got the black eye at school. 2 weeks after that, got another black eye. Somebody called the DCF hotline. It's probably the right thing to do. 17-year-old kid. Administrator could have talked to him. Instead, the DCF shows up, interviews that student, tells him who he is, no other adult in the room with him. Interviews his sister, doesn't tell the sister who he is, why he's there, no other adult in the room. Found out to have it was a good faith, determined to be false reporting in good faith. Understand that. Why are the kids alone when they're being questioned by a government official? They're not a legal official, so it's not in the code of conduct. They're not law enforcement, but they're enforcing law because they're executive branch of the governor's office. If you were going to have an HR meeting with somebody, you'd have another witness in there. When I talked at the sheriff himself, Chip Simmons, there were 5 other deputies in the room, armed on every side of me when we had that conversation. It's a great time. You have two public service organizations making up their own rules on how to work together, specifically on interviewing students that don't mesh. The SRO agreement is supposed to fix that. The SRO agreement hasn't fixed that. You also have now campus security officers, the yellow shirts. Part of their job description, knowledge, skills, and abilities includes interviews. You don't have a policy on what they can do.
Thank you, sir. All right, we have somebody else who raised their hand if they wanted to speak now instead. And I'll have you give me your name so I get things straight here.
My name is Chiara Chapatin, and I've been given 3 minutes. By this, what's your name?
Right, from Linda Gully?
Yes.
Linda? But she has to be in the, okay. All right, I'm sorry, I didn't see the hand. I looked over there because you were sitting over there. Hey, Miss Gully, good to see you again. All right, go ahead.
Yes, thank you. My comments were broader than just the book ban, so I wanted to go now. I want to point out to you that the many working families, the many working parents that are most acutely affected by this, by seeing, the quality of their education of their children degrading, AP courses being taken away, all these different things, they're not here today because of how overworked and underpaid they are. People are working 40, 50, 60 hours. And so there are a lot of, there's a wide variety of people up here, but a lot of us here today are older or students like myself. We got to be thinking of the many, many people who are shut out of this process, who can't come to a meeting to listen for hours and hours to a lot of things that are not very relevant. We're wasting a lot of time on censorship and banning books, and I don't think that's appropriate. And we are experiencing in the state of Florida a war on our public education, and it's going on from grade school to grad school. This is not, it's not just our young children who are being affected. I go to the University of West Florida, and our university has been acutely affected by a rash of policies. Our Office of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion was shut down. Our staff and faculty are prohibited to host an annual coming out day. Well, I'll assure you that the students of the university are bringing it back, and we're going to be hosting our own. Librarians, professors, teachers, our faculty are not an enemy. We should not be demonizing them, and we should certainly not be calling them our opposition. They're not political leaders. They are public servants who are merely trying to give an education to our students, and they should not be penalized and targeted because they don't want to fast-track the censorship that's been going on. We need to stop telling our LGBTQ youth that they do not exist by pulling books that represent them out of the classrooms, out of libraries. And these attacks are hurting our students. This is happening across this country, across this state, and students are fighting back. We're seeing that, and you may hear a lot more of that soon. I want to. So in the opening prayer this evening, it was said that you are to use wisdom beyond your own experience. Well, I ask you to empathize with LGBTQ people, students, faculty, and staff, and put yourself in their shoes. Think about what it's like to be a transgender person in this country when our governor is going across the country right now, demonizing transgender women, cutting ads, saying that, we're abhorrent abominations. We should consider that. And, I, for a very long time, have neglected to finish my application into the school district because, to be a substitute teacher, because I figured that we're not interested in employing someone like me, a brown transgender woman. Well, I've decided that, here in my hometown, this place that I love, Pensacola, where I was born and lived all my whole life, that I shouldn't be afraid of that. So I will continue going forward and put that application in. We live in a state where 1.5 million people cannot vote because of their prior felony convictions. where prison gerrymandering moves people to places where they don't live, taking away electoral power from their communities. So we got to understand that, like, while you have been elected by the people, you've not been elected by all of the people. I've knocked on doors for campaigns here in Pensacola, and it is crushing, heartbreaking. How many doors you knock on and you talk to the people and they say, I would love to vote for your candidate, but my right to vote has been taken away. And it is disproportionately has affected older black Americans, black Floridians. We should remember that. All of these anti-LGBTQ policies violate one of the most important laws we ever passed in this country, the Civil Rights Act. And that's not according just to me. The Supreme Court of the United States ruled that, you know, if you have a policy that only that applies to one sex but not another, like say it affects disparately transgender and gay people, that's a violation of the Civil Rights Act because it's a discrimination on the basis of sex. So we should not, you need to reverse course and pass comprehensive protections for students, faculty, and staff. Save the teachers union that is being undermined by the DeSantis administration, where now we're requiring 60% just to keep your union. Well, that's taking away our teachers' speech rights. It's taking away their right to organize labor. And I know so many people, so many of my peers at the University of West Florida and other folks who are no longer interested in a teaching career here in Escambia County. I know people who are afraid to be open about their transgender identity, and they're leaving the state to go to somewhere else where they are not so hostile. What's been going on is not acceptable. This is my hometown. It is breaking my heart that we have become so cruel and so hostile to people who maybe we don't understand all the way. But I would say that we the people are not going to put up with this forever. And you know, I cannot wait to go back to knocking on doors. We will do that, and we will stay woke here in the state of Florida and in Pensacola, Florida.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, that brings us to the end of public forum. Next on the agenda is the approval of the minutes. Item A, the August 11th regular workshop.
Move the approval of item A, 3A.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, please vote.
Approved 5-0.
Thank you, sir. Next is item B, the August 15th regular workshop, or regular meeting, rather.
Mr. Chair, I'll move item B.
Thank you, sir.
I'll second it.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, please vote.
Approved 5-0.
Thank you, sir. Item C, September 8th special meeting.
Move to approve.
Second the motion.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, please vote.
Approved 5-0.
Thank you, sir. No unfinished business. The administrative appointment was moved forward. We are at the, brings us to proposed additions, revisions for a first reading. Our first item, B, changes to the School Board Policy, Chapter 4, Instruction. Is there a motion?
I'll move item B.
I'll second it.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, please vote.
Approved 5-0.
Thank you, sir. Item C, changes to the Elementary Code of Student Conduct. Is there a motion?
Also move.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion?
Mr. Chair.
Yes, ma'am.
As we discussed yesterday, I had asked the question about the if appropriate, and I was wondering if we could get the attorney to address that issue because there was a comment about it.
What was discussed, and I think, is Mr. Bennett still here? I can follow up with him. What was discussed yesterday was the way the language was written, it created a situation of an absolute where school personnel would be present in the room while a student was being questioned. There are certain occasions where law enforcement tells us that no one else can be in the room, and we do not have the authority to interfere with their law enforcement activity. Additionally, we've had situations where parents have told us, when we have notified them, that they do not want school personnel in the room. So the purpose behind the language was not to create a situation where there was some ambiguity about who was supposed to decide what was appropriate. It was to create some flexibility with the language to address those situations where school personnel cannot be present, rather than having an absolute requirement that they be in the room.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. We did have that discussion. We went further. It was reviewed, and it was not overlooked.
And Mr. Chair, I want to say to the public, if you watched our workshop the other day, we went on for a good long time, and there was a lot of good discussions, and that's why you've seen us move so quickly through the agenda.
Thank you, sir. Any other discussion on item C? Been moved and seconded. The discussion's over. Please vote.
Approved 5-0.
Thank you, sir. Item D, changes to the secondary code of student conduct. Is there a motion?
Move approval.
Second.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, ma'am. Moved and seconded. Any discussion here? Again, the if appropriate was in this also, and for the same reasons. Any other discussion? Seeing none, please vote.
Approved 5-0.
Thank you, sir. Brings us to item E, changes to the School Board Policy, Chapter 3, School Operations. Is there a motion?
I'll move item E.
I second it.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion on item E? Seeing none, please vote.
Approved 5-0.
Thank you, sir. Our next one is item F, changes to School Board Policy, Chapter 7, Students. Is there a motion?
He's getting
I so moved.
Moved.
I'll second.
Moved and seconded. Item F, any discussion? Seeing none, please vote.
Approved 5-0.
Thank you, sir. We have one item for public hearing. After a motion second, I will call for the public hearing. Item A, changes to the School Board Policy, Chapter 4, Instruction. Is there a motion?
I'll move item A.
Second.
Moved and seconded. I'll now call for the public hearing. We have two speakers. Both have 9 minutes. Our first one is Lil Eubanks. And Ms. Eubanks, you have Leanne Eubanks, okay, and Spencer Daves. Spencer, okay.
There he is.
All right, thank you. 9 minutes.
I'm Lil Eubanks, and I was a 30-year veteran of Escambia Escambia School District. Recently, the Florida state government has put a lot of emphasis on ensuring that parents have rights to be in control of their children's education. Make no mistake, parents have had these rights for many years. They have had the opportunity to opt out of any library books they do not want their child to read, or opt out of their child watching any film or video clip they might not want their child to see, or acquire alternative assignments if they object to an assignment. However, the Florida legislature felt that these policies were not enough, so they passed the Parents' Bill of Rights, Senate 1014.04, which states that a parent has the right to direct the education of his or her minor child. The passage of the law clearly states that this right only applies to directing the education of their child. In fact, our school board rule 4.06 states that no parent, guardian, or resident of the county has the right to determine the reading, viewing, or listening resources for students other than their own children. Unfortunately, instead of using the policies already in place for directing their own child's education, some parents have taken it upon themselves to try to direct the education of other people's children by attempting to ban books from school libraries so they are not available to other people's children. They are infringing on the rights of other parents to direct their children's education. No one parent should be able to have books removed from a school library just because the book's content doesn't support that person's point of view. The Media Specialist Guidelines state that the Media Center shall provide a wide range of materials on all levels of difficulty, with diversity of appeal and with representation of different points of view. State law says that the Media Center collection must support the broad racial, ethnic, socioeconomic, and cultural diversity of the students of this state. If you take a close look at the list of the 230 plus books that a small group of people are trying to remove from our media centers, you can't help but notice that the majority of them are written by people of color or authors within the LGBTQ plus community, or are about the struggles of members of those groups. Removing these books from the media centers makes it appear to our children that reading about the struggles of diverse groups have no merit, when in fact it has a great deal of merit. Reading diverse books gives students a broader, more realistic view of the world. This also helps students dealing with their own challenges to know that such difficult circumstances can be overcome. If the changes that have been proposed to School Board Rule 4.06 are passed, the superintendent of schools will be practicing more of that viewpoint censorship, which the parents supporting book banning are using. It will allow the superintendent to determine that a challenged book can be removed without going through any process. The current guidelines for selecting materials for the collection of a school library requires the consultation of reputable, professionally recognized reviewing periodicals. Is the superintendent going to do that? Does he have time to read all 230 plus books in their entirety and still be able to run our school district? The rules say that the procedure for selecting materials for the library requires the input of all stakeholders with transparency to the community and stakeholder and peer reviews. Removing a book from a media center should entail a deliberate process with input from trained professionals and community members who represent diverse points of view and who have read the entire book. A book should not be removed because someone disagrees with or doesn't like the content. By allowing the superintendent to remove books, no parental rights are observed. In fact, they are taken away. Under the Florida Administrative Code, only persons who are certified as educational media specialists, are authorized to make selections of materials available to students in a school library. I doubt if our superintendent has that certification. If parents have a right to know about the books students are allowed to read, they should also know what books are being removed, why, and on what basis. Public knowledge should cut both ways. As far as I know, no one knows what books have been removed from the media centers in this most recent purge of books. Nor have I heard the criteria for what is meant by sexual content. What does that phrase mean? Is it a passionate kiss between heterosexuals, okay, but not between homosexuals? What is happening to those books that are being pulled? Can we get a list of those titles? What is the process for getting those books reviewed and put back on the shelves? Is the superintendent going to review these as well? We need answers to these questions, as well as knowledge about what criteria the superintendent will use for removing books. Is the criteria just going to be to listen to the person who has gotten a list of bad books from a group like Moms for Liberty? Or can the superintendent give us guidelines explaining why certain books are being removed? The book removal process is tedious, but if the district materials committees are allowed to do their jobs and the school board pays attention to their recommendations, there would be a fair process, and it would not be left up to one person to make these decisions. When a group comprised of professional educators, parents, and community members converge to discuss a book challenge and reach a conclusion about whether or not to keep a book in the media center, despite what some board members might say, that is a reflection of community values. I suggest that parents who are concerned with which books are in media center collections take advantage of the opt-out policies that are already in place and stop tromping on the rights of other parents who want their children to have access to the books that a small group of parents are trying to have banned from our school libraries. Please vote no on adopting the changes to School Board Rule 4.06, which will allow the superintendent to remove books from our media centers and bypass the district's committees and the board. And I would like to say, in addition, that nobody is saying we want pornographic books in the libraries. What we are saying is that we shouldn't have to close the libraries to do that. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Linda Fussell, who also has 9 minutes. Drusilla James. Okay. And Kathleen Varner. Thank you.
And before I get started, I would just like to thank Lily Eubanks, because everything I know about mathematics as an adult, she taught me. She is a wonderful teacher. Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight. And y'all could get, if you need any refreshers, she's good for it. On Sunday, August 27th, in a public forum, the main book challenge complainant in Escambia County spoke to a group of people and said these words about the book banning effort in the county. And I quote, "We got a new superintendent, the former director of the books, the media specialist, she resigned. Just people were changing. We have a superintendent now who loves Jesus and is trying as hard as he can to follow the law and to get this mess out of our schools." And my question is this true? I was very, very, very concerned. Is the removal of the books a done deal after what may be an affirmative vote on the rule change to School Board Rule 4.06? I'm extremely worried that banning books in Escambia County has become correlated to Jesus and become a religious action. I support everyone's right to practice their chosen religion, but I support more strongly the separation of church and state as guaranteed under our Constitution. It has been in recent months that the book banning contingent here sees the new superintendent as a savior of sorts in terms of taking books off the shelf. Banning books in Escambia County is clearly secular and should be treated as such. Once a book is put on a library shelf, it becomes protected speech. Special interest groups are attempting to capitalize on a natural impulse response to get books immediately removed by their school board. There is a process in place in Escambia County in which all books that are challenged can be examined for the supposed pornography or sexual content. School Board Rule 4.06 states that, quote, no parent, guardian, or resident of the county has the right to determine the reading, viewing, or listening resources for students other than their own children. The board needs to enforce this section of the reconsideration of challenged material and not allow one person to restrict all library books. Parents always have the opportunity to opt out of any library books they do not want their children to have access to. Rather than limit books for every child, they can attend to their own student through the opt-out. This new section of Rule 4.06 was included in response to members of the board who objected to the decisions made by the District Materials Committee to generally keep the challenged books on the bookshelves and available to students. Several members stated that they did not know what was wrong with the committees because the decisions were not reflective of the community. Once again, not understanding that when a group comprised of professional educators, parents, and community members converge to discuss a book challenge and reach a conclusion to keep a book is actually a reflection of community values. Removing a book should be a deliberate process with input from trained professionals and community members who represent that diverse point of view and who have read the entire book. A book should not be removed because someone disagrees or doesn't like the topic or content. The new section of Rule 4.06 allows the superintendent to remove books and bypass the district committees and the board. A concern is that this rule also opens the superintendent to concerns of viewpoint censorship. The very viewpoint censorship that brought about not one, but now 2 lawsuits against the school board. Florida statutes within that rule, 847.001, says a book should be examined as whole in the definition of harmful to minors, and 847.012 refers to sexual content and harmful to minors, again examining a book as a whole. So somebody is going to have to read those challenged books as a whole. This rule also bypasses the stakeholders. By allowing the superintendent to remove books, no parental rights are observed. Parents of students in the district are not included in the decision, and there are many parents who see their parental rights to have books available to their students excluded. This rule relieves the school board from making the decision to keep, restrict, or remove books. Rather than implement this rule, think about improving the reconsideration of challenged materials. Limit the number of challenges made by one person. The district is held hostage by a main complainant, responsible for over 80% of the total book challenges. There should be a method in place for those accepting, rejecting the reconsideration request to confirm that the objector has met the criteria for objection. For example, there is a challenge right now to a book because the word sissy is, quote, the word sissy is used several times throughout the book, unquote. Really? The word sissy? Should our taxpayer money be spent to carry out this challenge? And speaking of taxpayer money, consider the cost to the district, staff time for reviews, and cost of materials for the books. If you are reluctant to limit the number of requests that can be filled at one time, consider charging a fee when an objector files more than 3 to 5 challenges at a time. This would model the way that public records requests can vary in cost depending on the amount of time it takes away from the regular work of staff. Book Riot reported that the average school or district level committee review in Florida can cost between $500 to $800 due to expenses. Consider the impact on student needs. Any depiction or description of sexual assault fits the definition of sexual conduct, and a person with negative intentions could completely eliminate access to all books on the subject intended to support teens with the necessary information to protect and advocate for themselves. For this reason, it is important to limit the number of reconsideration requests of any one person may make at a time. The stated reason for most book removals, especially those which concern sexual or social themes, is to protect children. At a time in which all sorts of material and imagery can be found on any number of electronic devices, that is unlikely. What they are likely to do, however, is to teach children undemocratic lessons. That if you do not like something or just do not want to see or hear something, you can just block it. That you can keep others from exercising their freedoms and thinking for themselves. Trying to limit or refute or remove those freedoms is not patriotic. And finally, I ask the board again to put any book challenged because it violated HB 1557 back in the school libraries of Escambia County. Participating in the marketplace of ideas, a democratic society requires a thick skin. Removing books because you're afraid of what they say, or more likely who might read them, and what they might learn or think, is anathema to liberty. I urge you to reject this new rule and put the books back on the library shelves. And thank you very much.
That's the end of the speakers for the public hearing. Do we have any discussion from the board? Hightower?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Because I am concerned with the interpretation that the superintendent has the ability to take any book off of the shelf. As I read the rule, and I'm looking at our legal assistant, that's why I don't normally look at my phone, but I couldn't get it to come up on my, but as I read this, it's in the case where a book has been challenged because of its pornographic content or its a violation of 847 point whatever. And those are the books that in consultation with the Director of Library Services,
Correct.
they can determine to pull that book until it has been reviewed.
Correct.
That's the way I'm interpreting this. The other process that we've been having in place where we have a committee and those things will still happen with anything that is challenged on the basis of anything else. Am I not correct? Because
the new legislation requires that any book that is challenged on the basis that it is pornographic or it contains sexual conduct, it is required to be removed, regardless of whether or not there's merit to the challenge. If it's challenged for either of those two bases, it must be removed within 5 days. It must remain unavailable to all students until the review is complete. What has been proposed here is that the superintendent, in consultation with the coordinator of media services, shall retain the right to make a determination that the challenge to the title on the basis that it contains content that is pornographic or prohibited under Florida statute 847.012 or depicts or describes sexual conduct as defined in Florida statute 847.001 subsection 19, unless such material is for a course required by Florida statute 100 human reproduction and health, or identified by State Board of Education rule, provides sufficient evidence to remove the title without review by the District Materials Review Committee or Board. So that does create a possibility where if a book so very clearly strays across the line, that if the coordinator of media services says, I know that this one is not going to make it, she can bring it to his attention, and rather than go through the expense of convening the committee to make the decision, he can just direct that the book be removed.
but only on the basis of those particular.
Yes. If somebody challenges it on the basis that it's woke or it violates House Bill 7, no, it has to be based on one of those two challenges.
And I wanted to add one other thing. And Ellen, first of all, Elizabeth, are you doing the scrolling? Will you open it and scroll all the way down? Because I want to make sure before I say this I'm correct. Will you Scroll all the way down for me. Go back up real quick. I just want to make sure that once I've seen everything. Okay, I think I'm good. I won't answer all the questions you ask. I'll try to answer as many of them as I can. Ms. Eubanks, I do not have media services certification, so you're correct. Can you talk about the timeline? Because most of this policy was already created. Our previous coordinator of media services, I just want to be sure, you know, I know I had the opportunity to call you the other day and talk to you. Appreciate that opportunity. I don't want you to think this is a Keith Leonard thing. I want you to be sure you know what the timeline, I want to be certain that all of our citizens know. Do you mind, instead of it being me, talk about the timeline of when all these policies were created?
I don't mind at all,
Okay,
but I'm not sure quite what it is that you want to be conveyed, but as many people in public forum very aptly described, we were hit with an onslaught of legislation out of Tallahassee that required us to do a whole lot of things in very little time. And so we did, in response to legislative requirements, we had to adopt a procedure for parents to challenge books. The original policy that we adopted allowed parents, we were required to take books off the shelves if they were challenged on the basis that they were pornographic or obscene. But we created a process whereby parents could opt back in. If they wanted their kids to have access to that book, they could provide written permission to let them do that. And that was the policy that this board adopted. But then the legislature has come back, and the Tallahassee folks said, if somebody challenges it on one of these two bases, it has to be removed from the shelves within 5 days. And it must remain unavailable until the conclusion of all reviews. They didn't write in any exceptions. They didn't write in anything that allows us to respect parental consent for their children to read those materials. It is a legislative mandate that we are required to follow. So that's where we are.
I wanted to be sure everybody heard that. Thank you. Thank you.
Go ahead, Ms. Eubanks. We typically don't do the back and forth, but I think the superintendent would like to be able to have things cleared up. If you would come to the mic so that it's recorded appropriately.
So my clarification question is, so the idea is, and we all agreed, nobody wants pornography in the libraries or whatever. So we're saying we're pulling those books, and you are reviewing those books and deciding if they really need to be pulled or not. I'm not sure.
I haven't been, no superintendent that we've had has been able to do that because this policy has not passed.
Okay, but that's what this policy would mean.
That'll be one thing we would be able to do, yes, ma'am.
Okay.
In
But-
consultation
Yeah,
with someone who does have media services
Uh-huh.
certification.
But, so are we still keeping the materials committees and the book review things if the books have been pulled because they're woke or because they talk about, something transgender or LGBTQ or whatever? That process will still be in place?
Yes.
Is that correct? Or are you going to be doing your review with that too?
Well, presently, it's in place, and we had suspended it because of all of this that got thrown at us, and the media specialists had a lot on their plates, and so we're trying to get that part done first. Is that correct, Ms. Odom?
Yes.
And I can speak. Yeah, absolutely, that's correct. We still do not have 100% open access at 100% of our media centers. We do not have that yet, ma'am.
Okay. But, and is there a list available to the community of the books that have been pulled off?
For every book that has been challenged, there is a list on our website. I won't say interactive, but it is a constantly updating list. It's been in stasis for a while because we have put a halt on things. But every book for which a formal challenge has been filed, it is on there. There's a tremendous amount of information. In fact, just today, we moved the link to it to the home page of the school district website. So if you go to escambiaschools.org, on our homepage, if you scroll all the way down to the bottom, there is a link that says challenged instructional, I don't want to get the...
But what I want to know are
It
ones...
has the results of every book that has been challenged, and if they've been removed, there are some books. It's interesting that a lot of people are saying that you've removed all these books. A lot of times, the decision that was made was, we're not going to remove it, we're just going to restrict it to certain grade levels. It's still available to certain kids. Determinations have been made regarding whether or not these books are age appropriate. But also there are books that the committee themselves, the the district-based committee, made the decision that these books are not age appropriate and they don't belong in schools. It's all reflected on this list.
Okay, that includes the ones that have been pulled, like since the libraries were closed at the beginning of school and librarians are still going through them.
So we are required, there is, I don't remember if it's an actual statute, the day is long and the mind is tired, but I don't remember if it was a state board rule, I believe it was, that we are required to report to DOE annually every single book that is removed from the shelves. So that is something for which you can make a public records request either to us or to the state DOE. They should have that information.
And that process is still going on in the libraries.
Yes. Absolutely.
Because it takes a lot of time.
Absolutely.
And just the logistics thing, are the librarians talking to each other and saying, well, I pulled this, you probably want to pull that? And
Not only are they talking to each other, they are talking to me. We had a meeting a couple of weeks ago. I would tell you what I would call it, but it was a very productive meeting. We'll be meeting again. I know that our high school director and Bradley met maybe last week or the week before, so it's ongoing, and we're getting as close as we can get, as quick as we can, because it's important for everyone.
yeah, because it's sad when a student, when you usually can tell a student, well, who has all his work done, well, get a book and read it. Oh, I can't, because my classroom teacher's school library is not available.
Correct.
So
Yes, ma'am.
that's a sad thing.
Yep.
But thank you
Thank
for
you.
answering my question.
Thank you.
Yeah, Ms. Fussell. I hesitate, but go ahead, come up to the mic so people could hear.
I just want to know about the 1557 books, because does that involve y'all's participation in the lawsuit? Is that why they have not?
We cannot make any comments about pending litigation.
No.
But the 1557 books with the Attorney General saying
Can't
that
answer anything at this point in the questions you're going down
the road.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
okay.
Thanks.
Ms. Varner. No. I have old people ears.
I just have one quick question. The review committees are charged with reading the book in its entirety before they discuss and make decisions and so forth. If this 406 goes into play, will the superintendent and/or the media director be required to read that book in its entirety? Because this is a problem that we've had with some things that are marked as pornographic. When you see them in context, there's a reason for it to be like that.
I'm going to have the opportunity to see you really, really soon, right? When is the retiree?
Thursday.
Ma'am?
Thursday.
Thursday?
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
I don't want to put that question out for you there because it's going to be a friendly environment.
Okay, I'm looking forward to it. Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
The way the policy is currently written, no, ma'am, I would not have to read it in its entirety. To be able to determine if, like, a photograph in it was pornographic, I would not have to read the entire book.
Would the media director have to do such?
No, ma'am, not according to the policy.
But you're talking about just graphic stuff. I mean,
I'm talking about
pictorial stuff. Okay.
pornography and sexual content is what I'm talking about.
We're talking words also, not just graphics, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Good to know.
And Miss Varner's known me a long, long time. She would tell you I do love Jesus. So.
Yes, it's true. Thank you.
Mr.
The thing that's bothered me about it is the perception has been given by, again, a small number of people to the community making assumptions and assertions. Okay? So, it got out there from people making those statements that were untrue. And I don't want to get on the soapbox, but I go back to every media center in this district was not closed the first day of school. There were ones who, in coordination with the principal and the media specialist at that site, they said, hey, in order for this to happen, this and this, I'm going to be closed. But you know what? I worked in this school district for 38 years. And going back to my first years in teaching, the media centers were always closed the first 2 to 3 weeks of school. They were closed because, especially at elementary level, teachers and media specialists and media aides were helping all the new kindergartners who were lost and wandering around and doing other things, getting things ready, getting textbooks out in which classroom they, on and on and on. So that wasn't something new and different, but it was blown up by people to make it look like some horrendous thing was going on in Escambia County, and it wasn't factual. Yeah, there were those that were closed down, but that decision was made by the principal and by the media specialist at that site, and they're working through it. They're trying to follow the law just as everybody else on the board and at the district level, everywhere. They know that the new legislation said those materials had to be reviewed, had to be looked at. Now, Bradley, if I'm saying something wrong, you stop me, because I don't want to go over a cliff unless forewarn me if I am. But they have to be reviewed before everything is opened as it was in the past. And it's because of the newest legislation. Period.
I have a question.
All right, but we make it real quick, because we have beat this dead horse until he's...
Well, this is about pornography. One of the selections that was read was about masturbation. And I'm just asking, is masturbation automatically considered pornography?
Yeah, we're not going to get into this.
Valuations are not
Well, is there a good definition of what we're considering
I
pornographic at this point?
At this point,
Mr. Chairman,
I'm done.
may I make one quick statement?
You want to be the expert on
No, I'm not going to be an expert on that one.
You've been around longer, Bill.
I have been around longer, and I have suffered through a few of those occasions that I didn't want to have to talk about it. But, folks, it is now September. The legislature will meet again in January. And may I guarantee you what we are looking at tonight probably will have to be changed, because they're going to come up with new ideas. So we might request that you call your local legislators and say, give the school district a break. We might need a year where there's a moratorium on school changes, because we can't catch up. It's completely impossible to know, because this change we were working with in July. Excuse me. So, I mean, just hang on.
The timelines have been unbelievable. You know, it used to be if there was new rule came out, the state had 6 months to put it into enacting rules by the DOE, and then 6 months later it went into effect. Now, it's passed one day and they put it in place 2 weeks later. And it's just impossible for that to happen. Now, someone in the rear of the room, okay, quick. I'm talking about the length of the question, not the travel. Oh, well, yeah.
Her name on one.
So can I know?
Go.
I just have a question. Okay.
Just ask your question.
Thank you for giving me this moment, because I came back in and I'm trying to understand. So Bill Slayton just made a fabulous point, which is the legislators are about to go back in, and they are inevitably going to change everything or make it harder or make it worse. And if that is the case, why not keep it the way it is? Wait for that to happen, and then make a change. And my second thing is, Superintendent Leonard, I can't imagine that you really want, as much as Escambia County keeps having book after book after book, that your time is going to be spent looking at books. I would hope that your time would be spent on the issues that are at hand, which are not reading books. Not that you shouldn't read books to get more educated, to get more engaged, but that's not what we put you in office for.
All right, now that's a different issue, and we're
Well,
not.
I'm just saying, because then therefore he couldn't, all I'm saying is that then we wouldn't have to
Okay.
have him reading the
Your
books.
recommendation is noted, but.
Okay, that's all I need.
That's
Just-
all you needed to do.
Thank you,
so
sir.
much.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
Okay.
If I could add one more, I was requested to give a timeline, and one vital bit of timeline that I omitted. Not this year's legislative session, but last year's legislative session, the legislature passed a law that mandates that any book that is in a school library or media center must be reviewed and selected by somebody holding a media specialist certification. So on top of the book challenge and having to deal with that, the reason the libraries were shut down over the summer was because our media specialists were tasked with the Herculean job of going through every single book in their library and reviewing it, not for pornography, not for obscenity, not for all of the things that have gotten these books on the challenge list, just on a basic level so that they can check the box and say, this book I can certify has been selected by someone who holds a media specialist certification. And I will defer to Ms. Vincent on how many books we have in our libraries, but if you consider how big a task that is, that's the baseline of what we are trying to get through in addition to managing these book challenges. So
Okay.
I apologize for omitting that from
All
the
right.
timeline.
All right, we have had questions, we've been responsive, we are trying to be respectful of everyone's desires and wishes, and I think everyone has a clear understanding. We have a motion made, we've had our discussion.
I did want to make one question was asked about why don't we leave it the way it is, and we can't leave it the way it is because of new legislation, and we have to, as someone so eloquently pointed out, that whole board's been removed because they didn't follow law, so.
We will follow the law on every instance. But please vote.
Passes 5-0.
Thank you, Mr. Superintendent.
Thank you.
We're moving on to the consent agenda. The next item of business is the approval of the consent agenda. Can I get a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So move. Second.
Moved and seconded. Are there any items to be pulled?
Do we have anyone left to, okay.
All the speaker forms have been done. It was for the public hearing on that one, so. Looking at it in curriculum, anything? Finance?
Well, can we scroll?
Human resources? Operations? Clayton, do you have something to pull? Okay. All right, seeing no one pulling anything, please vote on the consent agenda.
Approved 5-0.
Thank you, sir. Next, we go to number 4, items from the board. Moving into items from the board. Item A, school board out-of-state travel. Is there a motion?
I'll move the motion.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, please vote.
Approved 5-0.
That did have the change for the one-way ticket, didn't it? Right. The item B, superintendent evaluation instrument. Is there a motion?
I'll move the evaluation instrument.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any other discussion?
There will be one more piece of this with the
Right.
rubric.
The rubric will be
So,
coming.
just for the public to know.
Right. Any other discussion? Seeing none, please vote.
Approved 5-0.
Thank you, sir. And next items from the superintendent. Item C, the formal hearings. Is there a motion?
Move the adoption of the recommendation of the superintendent.
Second the motion.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, please vote.
Approved 5-0.
Thank you, sir. Item D, disciplinary reassignments. Is there a motion?
Move we accept the superintendent's recommendation.
Thank you, sir.
I'll second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, please vote.
Approved 5-0.
Thank you, sir. Our next item is number 42A, employee discipline. Is there a motion?
Move we. Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, please vote.
Approved 5-0.
Thank you, sir. Lastly, item 43, 43A, the Foundation Board of Directors nominees. Is there a motion?
Move to accept the nominations.
Second the motion.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, please vote.
Approved 5-0.
Thank you, sir. This concludes our agenda items. Ladies and gentlemen, we are now adjourned.